This is Katie Lund, and I'm interviewing Paul Vader at his ranch out on Quartz Creek, Clover Leaf Ranch.
Clover Leaf Ranch. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can I start by asking you what year you were born?
1921.
1921.
Mm-hmm.
And you were born in the Gunnison Valley.
Yes.
To Palmer J. and Gertrude Bain.
And Gertrude Bain. Mm-hmm.
Right. You were their oldest child.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And your grandfather, Palmer H. Vader, came into this valley. I have a couple of dates. What date did he come in?
Well, he came in 1879.
Oh, okay. I don't even have 1879. I have 76 and 81. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and he came from Chautauqua, New York. Is that right?
No, his father came from New York, but and he was a young man. I mean, he was just a little boy because he was actually born there too. But they were all farmers, and then they. But he grew up in Iowa.
Oh.
In his early childhood in Iowa.
Oh, on a farm.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What made him come to the Gunnison Valley?
Well, the gold rush, and the adventure, I guess, of it. He was just a young man, and he came here and worked as a freighter and hauled freight over Alpine Pass when when the Denver and South Park was building a railroad at that time. And they had built the railroad up to about Hancock on the other side of the divide, and then they completed the section between Pitkin and Gunnison, and then they started running the railroad. But of course, the Alpine Tunnel wasn't drilled yet, and so he hauled freight from Hancock over to Pitkin. And then loaded it on the train, and it came on into Gunnison. So all the time that construction was, the Alpine Tunnel was being constructed while he hauled freight over Alpine Pass.
Oh, okay. That must have been kind of hairy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Oh, that was those pioneers were tough.
I know.
I'll tell you. Yeah.
I know.
But he was a real teamster.
So he was in his 20s about when he first came in?
Must have been.
Yeah.
He probably about his mid-20s.
What made him decide to stay in Gunnison Valley?
Well, he homesteaded. He saw, as he was going up and down the Tamich, to Gunnison, which was rarely, he noticed all this good bottomland on the Tamich, and having farmer's blood in him, why he decided to homestead, because there were a lot of homesteads taken up at that time.
Right. In fact, the valley was really just being settled, right?
Yeah, it was just in the process of being settled. So he homesteaded in 1881, and then he was married. He got married in 1882.
Who did he marry?
Margaret Stanton. And her parents also came from Iowa, but before that they migrated from Ireland.
Oh.
She was an Irish lady.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so she'd just been here about a year when he found her and married her.
Oh, wait, now was she just living with her parents, or was she teaching, or?
Yeah, she was living with her parents. I think they worked on the railroad at Parliament. That's how he got acquainted with her.
Oh, okay.
And during the time he was working on his homestead, clearing the willows and the trees and everything.
Now his homestead was about 6 miles east of?
9 miles east.
9 miles east.
Yeah, it's where Harry Vader is now.
Oh.
Harry Vader ended up with the old
the original
home. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So about 9 miles east.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just this side of the 114.
Oh, okay. And so did he have cattle?
Yes. Yeah. You know, he got at that time he was he and Lon Hartman were good friends, and at that time they had Galloways. They ran Galloway cattle, and in fact Lon Hartman and old P.H. Vader, as they called him.
Oh, they call him P.H. Yeah.
Were the first two that ran cattle in Taylor Park.
Oh.
So they were real pioneers on running cattle.
Yeah, right. So they take them up there in the summer.
On the range, yeah.
Yeah, and have their summer camps up there.
Yeah.
And establish that right.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important today, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, the forest wasn't in being at that time. Neither was the BLM.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Forest Service, I think, began in about 1905 or 1906.
Yeah, right.
But they never had the forest ranger come here until 1907. Or 8.
Yeah.
And that was old Kreitzer, Bill Kreitzer.
Oh.
And he was the first U.S. forest ranger.
Mm-hmm.
You probably heard that.
Yeah.
And there's something about that tells about that down at the museum, if you've seen it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But that's so. Now your grandfather and your grandmother had 10 children.
Yes.
And your father was the 5th child. Is that right?
That's about right.
Oh,
Yeah, he had 3 that died in infancy, and then there was Frank and Richard and Hattie. No, he was either and then I think one of the older ones died in infancy, so that would make him 5.
Oh, okay.
But he was actually the 4th one living.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I got that from reading. There's a Vader file at the public library. Did you know that? Yeah. And so I read that, and that's right.
I think Ann Zugelder did that.
Yeah, she probably
she?
did. Yeah. Yeah. She's another one I interviewed.
Yeah.
Was Ann. Yeah.
Oh yeah. She knows a lot.
Yeah, she does. So when your father grew up, did he ranch on your grandfather's, the same ranch as your grandfather?
No, he was called to the army in just before the First World War ended in about 1917, and he didn't even spend a year in the army. And then when he came back, he bought the place where Joe is now.
Oh.
There by the 6 Mile Lane.
Yeah.
He bought that place, and then he was married in 1918 to Gertrude Bain.
Gertrude Bain, right? Who lived right where Dwayne Phelps Ranch is today. Is that right? Is that
The Bain place?
The Bain place?
No, it's the old. There isn't anything left of it now. It's
Oh.
between here and the old Collard place.
Oh.
You know where that big rock is? Just on the, as you go down the road, it's just past that rock, a few hundred feet.
Oh, okay.
And you look up on the hill, and I don't think there's anything left but the old remnants of the cellar. It's still
okay.
there.
Uh-huh.
And later, why Doc Collard bought it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so,
I knew him because he lived next door to us. He and Mrs. Collard when he died, and then she lived there until she died.
Yeah.
And I think Palmer lived in that house too.
Yeah. He did.
Yeah. For a
On
while.
North Pine.
Yeah, North Pine. Right.
Yeah.
Ruby and North Pine. Right.
Yeah.
So that's the time.
Uh-huh.
So you were the oldest of their 3 kids.
Yes.
And you were born in 1921.
Mm-hmm.
And what are some of your earliest memories of the valley when you were a kid?
Oh, it was my earliest memories probably came along about the time of the Depression. Of course, I can remember before that, but I remember during the Depression we had, it was a struggle because no one had any money. And so we raised everything we could in the garden, and we had a cellar. And so, of course,
like a root cellar, right?
Yeah, a root cellar.
Yeah.
So and my mother was quite a cook, and she canned everything that she could. And in the summer, when the tomatoes came up from the lower country, she canned tomatoes and canned peaches and pears and made jam and jelly. And the only thing we had to buy was bread and coffee, or flour and coffee, because she made her own bread.
Oh, sure.
She even made her own soap.
Oh, yeah.
She made her own soap.
Yeah.
We'd butcher the hogs and she'd render the lard. And
that's pretty tough to make your own soap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But pretty near all the ranchers did the same thing. So we fared pretty well, and that's all we had to buy was flour and, well, sugar and coffee. I think that's about it. And we got by just fine. And we had chickens, and we sold eggs, and my mother and we milked cows, like all the ranchers did. And she made cottage cheese and butter. And it's about that time our first Safeway store came into town. And it's right where Lawler's is now.
Yeah.
It was right there on that corner, just a little bitty. It was just half the size of what Lawler's is.
So was that like 1932 or?
Probably, yeah, 32, 33, yeah. And so she traded, she could trade her butter for groceries then, for flour and sugar and that sort of thing. So actually her groceries didn't cost us anything.
I'd like to see you try that with Safeway today, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course now Safeway does not take any ranch food, neither does any store. But at that time, the stores did take butter and cottage cheese and that sort of thing.
Well, that makes sense because it was fresh and it was right out of the community, and it was, and it was a matter of survival too.
Yeah, it worked out real well.
Yeah.
So we got along fine. We never went hungry. And then in the wintertime, we ate when we'd run out of canned fruit, we'd eat dry fruit. The stores had dry fruit at that time. It came in big boxes. Dried apricots and peaches and pears, and it was just dirt cheap. It was just real cheap.
That's incredible, huh? Because today it's so expensive.
Today it's just put out of line today.
Yeah.
And so we learned to like it. And of course we had our own butter and eggs and milk. And of course everyone used horses in those days. And for a good many years afterward, for about 10 years after that.
Well, the roads weren't very good anyway, were they?
No.
Yeah.
No. Oh no, the roads were bad. And in fact, we only went, my earliest memories were that when we went to town, we went with a team and sleigh. We'd only go about once a month. And Dad would hook up the team and sleigh, and we'd go to town and get a few groceries. This is before the Depression, and because I could just barely remember that. We just covered up with robes and had hot rocks on the floorboards and robes over on flaps, black
How long
robes.
did it take to get from the ranch
Well, it
to
took
town?
about 6 miles. We went at the rate of probably a good 4 miles an hour. It's about an hour and a half.
Oh, so that's not too bad.
No, we could go down and back in the same day. And then all transportation then was by train. We didn't, of course they didn't even try to keep Monarch open, and it was a very primitive road full of U-turns, and it was steep. And I can remember going over it in the summertime. It'd take us 3 hours to get from here to Salida.
And is that by horse and wagon?
No, by
Car.
By Model T Ford.
Wow, 3 hours to get
Take
from here to
3,
Salida.
yeah. the old Model T would boil, and we'd have to and we'd have to stop and find a block to put behind the wheels because the brakes weren't that good, and let it cool off and go to the spring and haul water. We always took a bucket along, you know, and then we'd go some more until it boiled again.
Did you ever go all the way to Denver?
No, never.
Yeah.
No, we had, my dad's sister lived in Salida, so we'd go over there, maybe just once or twice during the summer to see them.
Yeah.
And he was a railroader. She married a fellow by the name of Murphy. And, well, let's see, unless you can think of something else. But anyway, when we go to Denver, or even to Salida, in the wintertime, it was always on the train.
Yeah, sure.
Or to Montrose.
Yeah, yeah.
And even when I got into school, we had an annual event called the annual Western Slope Music Festival in Grand Junction, and all the schools on the Western Slope went to that festival, whether it was grade, and that included grade school and high school. And we had both instrumental music and choirs.
Now, did you
Vocal.
sing or did you play an instrument?
Yeah, I did both.
Oh, what'd you play?
I played the French horn.
Oh.
French horn, and then I sang in the chorus too.
Do you still play the French horn?
No, I haven't. I haven't touched it in years. But anyway, we went down there, and every time we'd win something. And a lot of the times we'd be second and third, and sometimes even first.
Yeah.
So we had an excellent vocal instructor, Wilma Doig, which was a sister to Alex Campbell's wife, Lillian Campbell, and she was very good. And then Homer Flick was our instrumental teacher, and he was the brother of Rawls up here. And so we'd ride the train to that music festival every year.
That must have been fun.
And it was fun.
Yeah.
And the train was so long that going up Cyril, wasn't it? Yeah, going up Cyril. They had, I think, three engines. They had to put on 3 engines.
And this was a narrow gauge still, or
yeah,
until you got to where, Montrose? Was
yeah,
that the end of the narrow
at Montrose, we traded and got on the standard gauge, they called it there. And then the same in Salida.
Yeah.
Going to Denver.
Right.
Yeah. You got on the standard gauge to go to Denver.
That must have been a beautiful ride through the canyon, huh?
Yeah. Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Oh, we had the best time. And the train going up that pass, it went so slow that when the chaperones weren't looking, us kids would get out and run along the side of the train. Those chaperones sure had some wiry kids on their hands. But that's about all the mischief we ever got into.
Yeah.
Because in school we didn't dare go very far testing the teachers, or we'd get spanked or slapped or something. Then we'd get another whipping when we got home.
Yeah. I used to be, boy, the teacher was always right when I was growing up too.
You
know?
bet. Yeah.
If you're in trouble, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble.
Your parents weren't going to take your side against a teacher. Yeah.
Oh yeah, every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we had a lot of fun during those days. And in fact, when I went to college.
Now you went to Colorado State University.
Yeah.
It was A&M then.
Yeah, Colorado A&M.
And was that in Fort Collins?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Called it everyone called it Aggies. Why we went the whole way on the train.
Oh.
A good friend of mine that was in we were in all 12 grades together. Got on the train and left for Fort Collins, and we went all the way on the train. And our high school principal came down and saw us off.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah. You know, he was a fine man. Pascal Poe.
Now, I was going to ask you, when you went to school, where did you go to school? Did you go into Gunnison to school, or did they have they didn't have a country school out here, where your ranch was?
They had, my dad went to what's known as the Logan School, and you can still see the fence, the remnants of it, and it's right on the, as you go back to town, it's just beyond 114.
Oh,
and up on the right, on the north side of the highway, you'll see an old fence, a boundary fence that went clear around the schoolyard.
Yeah, so they had a school right up there when your dad was young.
Yeah. But before, sometime just shortly before I started to school, they consolidated that school district with the one in Gunnison. And so but the buildings were still there for several years.
So you went to Blackstocks then for elementary school, where Blackstocks is now?
Yeah, it's called Blackstocks now. It was called the Pine Street School then.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then we went to the 7th and 8th grade in the old stone Blackstock Pine Street School, the old stone building. Did you ever see it? Did you ever see a picture of it?
I must have seen pictures.
It was a great big two-story building made out of, well, it was bricks, but it had stone over the window and door casings, and then the foundation was stone. It was the old original Pine Street School.
I'm sure they have pictures of it at the library.
Oh, yeah.
I'll have to look it up.
I've got a picture of it right here.
Yeah.
I'll show it to you after we get done.
Okay.
And because then, so we went to 7th and 8th grade in there. Those ceilings were probably 15 or 20 feet high.
Was it cold, or did they have coal heat and it wasn't too bad?
No, it was pretty warm.
Oh, okay.
But I went to Blackstock. The Blackstock School was built in the cornerstone says 1926.
Yeah.
And that's the year I started kindergarten.
Oh, okay.
So I started kindergarten when that school was first occupied.
It's brand new, huh?
Yeah. And come to think of it, they had, after they built the new Pine Street School, which is called Blackstock now, they ran a steam pipe across the street. Of course, at that time, Pine Street was open. Their cars drove up and down Pine Street.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And so we had the heat that came from the new Pine Street School.
Oh, okay.
So, but it had several chimneys in there, as the pictures will show, or they had heated with stoves. Yeah. And then we went to high school up at the south end of Taylor Hall.
Yeah. Now I've seen pictures of Taylor of that.
Yeah. Just right under the eaves on the south end.
First they had
it said
high school there. Yeah.
Gunnison County High School, 1921.
Wow. And then the North Hall was the college.
Yeah.
And then sometime, when did they build the middle
Hall?
Yeah.
Middle Hall was built the last. They built North Hall first in 1910, and it's made out of stone.
Yeah.
And then they built South Hall in 1921. That's what it said under the eaves anyway. Well, and then, it is because there's a cornerstone there too. Have you ever seen it?
I don't think so.
And then they're on the west side. The cornerstones are all on the west side of those three buildings. Then they built Middle Hall, I think it was 1926.
Yeah.
And put in the auditorium and all those offices.
So did the high school use the auditorium the same as the college?
Yeah. We had mutual teachers. We got a good education.
Yeah,
Our librarian and our foreign language teacher and our industrial arts teacher taught both high school and college. And we really got a good education. Yeah. Because we had their expertise, and then we had our, for instance, our industrial arts was right in the south end, or right in the south end of Taylor Hall, in the basement, right where all those the print shops
are today.
Stuff is.
Yeah.
That was all industrial arts. Albert Capron was our teacher. I went all through 12 grades with one of his boys, Don Capron.
So it sounds like you got a good education here.
Yeah, we did. And in the 4th grade, when I got into the 4th grade, there were, just as an example of how they made us learn, that was when we learned our multiplication tables. And when our class moved up to the 4th grade, here were 4 big stout boys that later played football, and they had to repeat the 4th grade because they didn't learn their times tables. And so the rest of us got busy when we saw that, and we had to learn our times tables through 12 times 12. Not just 9 times 9.
We used to too.
And you
4th grade,
too?
4th grade was the year you learned your times table.
And you had to learn them, or you didn't pass.
That's right. They put it across, 2s, 3s, 4s. You could as you passed each one, then you could see it move across.
Yeah.
It'd be terrible just to have your 2s up there.
Yeah. So we learned more then than our kids did, or our grandkids are learning now. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah. And then probably you had good. They taught you how to read with phonics too, didn't they?
Oh yeah. They started with phonics in kindergarten. They stressed that. And then several years later they dropped it.
Yes. Because when I went to school and started to read was when they started teaching with sight reading. It took me a long time to learn how to read.
I don't know why they ever dropped it, but they did.
Then they went back to it.
Then they went back to it.
Because they saw you had to learn how to read with phonics, not sight reading.
Yeah. So I guess those trends go on cycles. Yeah.
But it's too bad for the people who get caught in the middle of them.
Yeah.
So, when you decided to leave school to go to college, was that a big step for you to go so far?
Yeah, it was a big step. But the reason I did is because I got a scholarship. I got a joint honor scholarship for 2 years. So and then I wanted to go and take animal husbandry. That's what I started.
And that's what you studied, huh?
Yeah, animal husbandry.
And so then after you did your 2 years, you came back here?
Yeah. Right.
Was that what, 1940?
42.
42.
I came back here in 42. And the Second World War was on then. And I had enlisted, but they wouldn't take me because of my eyes at that time. So I came back and helped Dad on the ranch there. And then I helped the acting county agent. I also helped the acting county agent recruit labor to put up hay for the ranchers. We had an everyone was in the army, and we had an awful hard time finding people to help with the hay crops.
Yeah, because if you were able-bodied, you were gone, weren't you?
Yeah. So all the young fellows were gone. We recruited whoever we could find. We'd send to Grand Junction for some people that were left over from the fruit harvest, and we just had to scrape the bottom of the barrel to find enough laborers to help get this hay up.
But you did.
Yeah. Yeah,
for those years.
we eventually got it out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1944, you met Anne Marie?
Yes.
Danny, right?
Yeah.
She was a Danny.
Yeah, she was a Danny.
And you met her at a dance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 1943, okay.
Yeah, we were married in 44.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a year later.
Yeah, I saw a picture of you two together in like 1944. There's a picture in the file of you. Yeah, have you seen that picture? I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
It's a really neat picture. Sitting against a car.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen that.
Yeah. It's a nice picture. I just have to turn this over. Get it on again. Last time I turned it over, I hit the pause button and the second side didn't work, but that's how it's going to work. So, when did you move to this ranch?
In 46.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, was it a Vader ranch or you bought it? Okay.
We bought it from an old rancher that was getting way up in years. His name was Ralph Little.
Oh. Okay.
And he and Ralph Little and old Mr. Will Collard, came to this country in what year was it? 1911, I believe. From Jefferson, they both came together. And Mr. Little settled here, and Mr. Collard down there where that new building is now, the old Collard place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we bought out Miss Ralph Little, and we've been here ever since.
Oh, okay, and you raised 11 kids here?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
yeah.
And were winters harder in those days than they are today?
Yes, I think they were. Yeah, we had some hard winters there for a few years. And I remember we did down home too, where it'd get between 30 and 40 below for a month straight during the whole month of January. Yeah. And I've seen that happen 2 or 3 times. And then it wasn't too long after we were up here that on Thanksgiving we hosted, it was a tradition that we had the Thanksgiving dinners for my dad and mother and my brother and my Uncle Richard and Virgie and Mark and Dan and them. And then they'd have it on, Uncle Richard would have it on Christmas, and then Dad and Mother would have it on New Year's. So we had those 3 dinners that we always had every year. It was a tradition. And so I remember very distinctly soon after we came up here, I was feeding with the team out across the road there, feeding the bulls and the calves, and it was on Thanksgiving Day, it was 35 degrees below. It came early that year. Yeah, we've had some pretty mild winters in the last few years.
Yeah, we have.
Comparatively.
Yeah. Even this is, people complain, but this is a pretty mild winter.
Oh, yeah. Because
I remember in the 70s, where some of those winters when it'd be, like it'd get down to 40 below and then it would snow, and then it'd get down to 40 below and then it would snow. And in March and April, you still had lots and lots of snow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in April, the spring of '52, that was the biggest snow I've ever seen here. Were you here then?
No, we didn't come till 72.
Till 72?
Yeah.
Oh. Wonder if it was 71, 51, 52. We calved in the snow. There was still snow all over, and we were feeding on the sleigh in April, all through April. Every calf was dropped on snow that year. And that was the year that there was, just for example, between the cemetery and Gunnison, even, you couldn't see the fence. And that meant it was 4 feet or over. Standard for top bar on fence is 4 feet. And And of course out here we had more than that.
Yeah.
And we had a hard time feeding
Oh,
that
I
year.
bet you did.
Yeah. And 57 was almost as bad.
Oh, yeah.
Those were the two biggest snow winters that I can remember. But of course they've had them before.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that the county bought a rotary.
Oh.
And they had to use, they bogged down with cats
Uh-huh.
on the road to Crested Butte.
Oh.
And they bought a rotary that year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because we couldn't get
It
through.
was one of the first, I guess it was probably one of the first ones that came out.
Mm.
But the cats would push the snow, and they just push it crossways with the way the road went, you know. And finally, it just got so narrow, and they couldn't push it well. It was up 10 or 15 feet, and they didn't have anywhere to put it.
Yeah.
So they had to get a rotary. Ann's dad was on the Board of County Commissioners
Oh.
that year. That's how we can remember.
Yeah.
And oh my, the people in Crested Butte, they went in and out of their houses on the second story.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was
It
lots of
was
snow
really
out there.
snow, right? Yeah,
10 or
I
15
know.
feet up
Do you
there.
think it's the ozone layer or the greenhouse effect, or?
I don't know.
I don't know
Maybe.
either. It's hard to tell.
It's hard to tell.
Since you're an expert on greenhouses.
Yeah.
Now, you also went to college and finished up your degree at
Yeah.
Western in botany,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
You graduated in 51, is that right?
No, in 74.
Oh, at 51, in 1974.
51, I took a course in bookkeeping for ranchers, accounting for ranchers,
Mhm.
and learned how to do income tax. And I did it for several years. But I went back to school in 72 in earnest to get
Yeah.
finished up.
What made you go back?
Well, I just always had wanted to finish.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to go to Fort Collins
Right.
because we were living here. And didn't want to go that far away, so I just went back to Western and finished up in 2 years, and I got a major in biology. Of course, they don't have a botany, straight botany course here. Here it's called biology, but I went heavy on the botany,
Botany.
and then I
Okay.
minored in chemistry.
Oh, okay. And
I
how
had-
have you used that degree? I know you used it.
Oh, I don't know. Well, I've used it with my greenhouse
Yeah, when did you
business.
start your greenhouse?
In 76.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you've been doing that since 1976?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And you're still doing that?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you still ranching?
hmm
Oh, okay.
Well, my boys take care of the ranch mainly,
Uh-huh. But you,
And,
yeah.
and then I spend most of my time with the greenhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah. hmm
That's good.
Yeah, it helped me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I learned a lot by going back. About plants, and, of course, and other things. I took industrial arts and several courses in that, which I always liked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then college, of course, those were good years at the college. 74,
Yeah.
7,
Oh, yeah.
72, 74.
It was going great then.
Yeah, it was.
Every
Yeah.
every one of my credits from Aggie's transferred.
Oh,
Every one of them.
yeah, well, they should have.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I mean, it
I
was.
mean, after all those years.
Yeah.
Right? But every one of them transferred, so that's why I was able to get finished up as quick as I did.
And then when did you work as a groundskeeper at the college?
I started there in 76,
Oh.
the same year I built the greenhouse.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know how I did both things. But of course then it started out, my greenhouse started out as a hobby,
Uh-huh.
more or less then.
Yeah,
And then it gradually grew into a business.
yeah.
But I'd come home and work out there at nights and on weekends, and
Yeah.
I managed to keep it going.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And did you like being a groundskeeper at the college?
Yes, Yeah, I liked it. Hmm. Yeah, I did all the landscaping and planting the flower beds and that sort of thing, trees and shrubs. Oh yeah, I like that kind of work.
What were some of the real difficulties that you felt ranchers faced in this valley in your lifetime, besides the Depression and the war for trying to bring in the hay? What were some of the other difficulties that they faced over the years?
Oh, I don't know. It just seemed like it was a constant battle with the forest at first. Mm-hmm. It was a constant battle with them. They wanted to keep cutting us and cutting our numbers, and then they kind of got they moderated, and the Forest Service did, and they adopted this what do you call it, multiple use.
Yeah, that was like in the 70s,
principle.
or was that before then, 60s?
I think it was in the 60s.
Yeah.
And so that, and then they got into, that's when they started getting into recreation and timbering and other things. And of course there's always been timbering going on up here. But they kind of, we got along with them fine there for a long time, and we still do pretty well. But then the BLM, we had trouble with them, and we're still having it, of course. Lately it's been this
grazing fee.
This grazing fee increase thing, and we think that we've made some headway.
Yeah, it looks like they have, doesn't it?
Yeah, we'll see when Babbitt's report comes out next month.
Yeah, but it sounds like he was very impressed with this report from the ranchers and the High Country Citizens Alliance. At least it showed that environmentalists and ranchers are not, can work together.
They can work together.
Sure.
There's always middle grounds, and
well, actually, when you think about it, environmentalists want a lot of the same things ranchers do. They don't want to see the land be one development from here to Crested Butte. Without the ranches in this county, it would be horrible. It's all that beautiful open space.
Yeah. And all that green grass and the cattle. It's just a way of life that we've always had here. Yeah. So the BLM is giving us a lot of trouble here, and they have for several years. And they've tried to cut our numbers. And used to be they'd build water tanks and fence, and build fences that we could trade pastures. And then they got to where they wouldn't do that; they'd make us do it, and still they would raise our grazing fees or want to. And so they didn't cooperate with us at all. Of course, they said the main reason they did it was because they were short of funds, but I don't believe they were, because if they are short of funds, it's because they have so many personnel that they could do without. We used to only have one forest ranger in this country for a long time. That was the original one, Bill Kreitzer. And then gradually there were, when we first started ranching here, there was one ranger on the Savoia, one in the Taylor River grazing district, and one for up Ohio Creek and East River. And that was all. I think they only had 3 forest rangers. But now they've got they got all kind of personnel, and they just
and all kinds of recreational areas.
Oh yeah.
Well, and sometimes, it's strange, like their plan to put showers and paving in all these campgrounds, and you know, people. I was talking to this woman in Denver about Dorchester because we, you know, go up there and camp, and it's primitive. It takes you 2 hours to get there from Gunnison because the road's so bad. Well, that's fine because you don't want everybody going there, you know. And the last thing you want is a shower, and
Well,
you know,
of course.
I know,
And a toilet.
and a toilet.
Well,
I know.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems a waste of money.
Yeah.
You know, and you
it
hear
is.
people say, "Well, we come here because there's so much freedom out here." You know, that's what attracts people to it. So
Sure it is.
I'd hate to see them.
Yeah.
I mean, put money into that.
Yeah, Pam Bodie got off on that and was trying to get it promoted, but I think it got stymied.
Yeah, I think it did.
Yeah, but that's all foolishness. All the frost that we had in the ground here, why?
Yes. Can you imagine
Yeah.
a shower up at Dorchester? Oh, right.
Yeah.
If you want a shower, we have one of those solar showers, you know, that you can bring camping, where you put the water out in the sun and it heats it.
Oh.
You can set up your own shower if you want a shower.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
The sun doesn't come out. If it rains, you don't get a shower. But
Yeah.
you know. I don't know. So, what about? There was also in the 70s there was a big emphasis on don't eat beef. Has that affected ranching in the valley? You
Yeah.
think?
Yes, it has. It did affect it. I think indirectly.
Yeah.
I think it did. Yeah. But see, we've always been the ranchers in the United States have always been threatened by other things too. For instance, see, Argentina used to import a lot of beef from Argentina.
Right, like for McDonald's and Wendy's and
And I think they still do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they import a lot of beef from those places. So that has hurt us too. And I don't know, it just seems like everything seems to have converged on us.
Yeah.
And it looks pretty discouraging at
Does
times.
it?
Yeah.
Really? You think there's a future for ranchers in this valley?
Not much of a one.
Oh,
No.
really?
No, I think they're, with all these environmental groups and everything, of course we're making a little headway now with them, which we're very happy with, but I don't know, it's just going to keep on going, I think, because there are these groups that want total non-use, you know. They don't want anything in the way of livestock. You know, you see it on TV every once in a while.
Yeah. So and also, how about development? All these.
Well, that's
The
the ranchers that are, you see, they can't. The ranchers are the second generation ranchers are going into other things because it's just they can't make enough money on the ranch.
Yeah, and are you a fourth generation rancher or third?
Third.
Third, so your sons would be fourth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah, they're fourth.
Yeah.
But they're the boys that are helping me or that are here on the ranch are one of very few around the country that are ranching. You know, they've taken over what their father did. Yeah.
And farming too. I mean,
farming.
you see that,
Yeah.
too.
The farmers.
Yeah.
There's so many rules and regulations and specifications we have to meet, and it just looks like, you know, the future looks kind of pretty shaky.
It's too bad too.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's the strength of this valley, is its ranching background. And it's nice having the college, it's nice having the ranching, and to see those go, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And of course the ranchers that have sold to housing developments too, you know, there's been several of them.
Yeah.
So our cattle numbers are way down in this county anymore.
I hate to see that too, but I understand. I mean, you know, it's money, you know.
Yeah.
If you need it to live on, it's hard not to sell out
Yeah.
when someone offers you money for your ranch.
Yeah.
But I hate to see it.
And see, there's another threat with this Union Park.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Union Park.
Union Park, that'll put all of us in the Taylor Park pool out of business.
Yeah. Do you think,
It'll put all of us out of business.
so far the court
If it
case
goes-
has been gone in favor of Gunnison Valley?
Yeah, so far.
Yeah.
But it depends on this Supreme Court issue on that they've taken to the Supreme Court
Mm-hmm.
that Arapahoe has. It depends on how it turns out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's supposed to be, I think, it's either sometime this month or next month they're supposed to make a decision.
Yeah.
And we've been, the power group has been working hard on that. Well, everybody has, so has the Upper Gunnison River Water Conservancy District and everything.
At least we united the valley against that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the
I
whole
mean,
valley's
that's just,
against that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And, well, you know, Judge Brown is, I'm really impressed with him as a judge.
Mhm.
I just hope that they'll just look at it and say, yes, you're right.
Yeah. I kind of think they will.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
kind of think too.
I kind of think they will
Yeah.
because he certainly does his homework. And
Yeah, he does, yeah.
I don't know how he can do read through all those piles and piles
Yeah.
of information.
But he's pretty, yeah. I used to watch him in court, but mostly criminal, but still. I was always impressed with him.
Yeah. Is his first name Richard?
No, Robert.
Robert.
Yeah, there are
Yeah,
two.
there are two of
Richard's
them.
the other one,
Yeah, Robert.
yeah. Which I think he's also a good judge.
Yeah,
Richard,
I think he is
yeah,
too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. No, I think it's
Yeah, I
Robert.
think they're
Yeah.
both good men.
Well, how do you feel about the water in this valley, personally? I mean, I read some things you said at meetings about the water in this valley and who it belongs to and who does it belong to?
Well, I don't know exactly what you mean.
Oh, okay.
It belongs to, well, of course, it's decreed to all the ranchers have a decree.
Right.
So does
Right.
the metropolitan areas.
Right.
They have decrees that date way back. And of course, the earliest decrees are the most sound. They'll be the last to be taken away
Yeah.
if it comes to that. But as it is, we have enough water on Quartz Creek. We've been fortunate to have enough water on Quartz Creek, and if we can just keep it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what are the dangers? Union Park?
Yeah, Union Park.
And what about individual selling their water rights to like Arapahoe or Denver or
Well,
whatever?
Well, there's some of them. I'm sorry to say that there's some of them are in favor of it because they need the money, and they're gonna. If they get a chance, they'll sell it to be diverted over there, and that'll really ruin this country. But I know of about 3 ranchers that have come out and said that they do that. That it comes, if it comes to that, they have to. Because a lot of the ranchers, have gone broke
Right.
in the last few years. Lots of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like there should be a way to be able to keep that water and keep the ranchers,
Yeah.
so that they don't have to go broke, so they don't have to sell it, so we end up like another South Park.
Yeah. South Park
Yeah.
is an example. We can all see that, what's happened yet.
Yeah.
And it's just complete devastation.
Yeah.
And the water, see, this water that we use is used and reused all the way down
Right.
the valley, clear down to the
In
dam.
fact, what the Compadre water users, a lot of them have first rights on this water,
On the Taylor
on
River.
the Taylor.
Yeah. They're the ones that built the Taylor Reservoir. Yeah, the Compadre water users in 1934. Yeah, because they wanted to make sure they had enough water. Because in drought drought years, why the water just never got down to them, and their crops burned up. So and of course in '34 there was a drought then too.
Yeah.
We had the drought and the depression at the same time.
Right, and that did affect this valley.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, we had that year. I was still at home, of course, in '34, and down on the Tamich, and they wouldn't even let us turn our cattle out on the range that year. We had to find range. We had to find private pasture to run. That was the only year that we had to do that.
Because it was so dry.
Yeah. Oh, we didn't raise. I don't know how we got by. We didn't raise enough hay to feed half of them. But somehow we had to ship a lot of them to get through the winter.
Yeah.
But Bruce Blackstock and Richard and Dad and Louis Revere down there in that area in the Tamich that were all in the Taylor Park pool. We made a deal with a fellow by the name of Hyatt, I think's his name, on the coach tope. Way up on the coach tope. And it's above where Funks are now.
Oh.
Yeah. And we took our cattle up there to graze them on his private property,
That was
on his
good.
grassland.
Yeah.
And we got by that way. Figured everyone in the pool did that. Took us 3 days we drove them up, horseback. Took us 3 days to get them there.
Were people as pessimistic about what might be happening then as they are now to ranching, or was there more hope in those days?
I think there was, as I remember, I suppose my dad was a lot more worried than, I don't know how worried he was. He was worried, I know, but I think all in all there was less stress then than there is nowadays. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. We just did what we had to do, and life was a lot more simpler.
That's true. There's a feeling if you worked hard, it would pay off for you.
Yeah.
And now you feel you can work hard, but it may not pay off.
Yeah, right. And you have so many interferences. You've got the planning commission, and there's so many governmental interferences, that
How did that outbuilding resolution come out? Did
they dropped it.
Oh, well, that's good.
Well, they should have. They dropped it. Yeah, at the second meeting, there were 45 people in there at least. The paper says 45 anyway. And the first thing when it came up on the agenda, Fred Field asked if there was anybody in the room at all that was for the proposal. Not a hand went up. Well, he said we're going to drop it. He says we went on a tour. We got in the car and went on a tour after we had this first meeting, and ran into all this opposition, and we just drove around. And they took the county building inspector, Rich Wojciechowski, and Fred Field and Rick Sandarelli. Marlene didn't go. And Mary Vader went with them. And they traveled around, and he said we didn't see any building that was really a hazard to any children or anything except one. And he says we can deal with that in another way and try to in a cooperative way instead of trying to dictate to them what to do. And so he said, I'll admit, he says, none of us commissioners had read this proposal at that first meeting. They had never read it till afterward.
And it just sounded good. Well, if a building is unsafe, get rid of it. But that wasn't really what it said, was it?
No.
It was about outbuildings. And,
outbuildings, and even it could be interpreted as buildings that weren't pleasing to the eye, too. So, you know,
Yeah.
and
There's a lot of houses in Gunnison that might qualify.
yeah,
You know?
right in Gunnison.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and so they just dropped it. They didn't ask for any input at all. But boy, everyone was ready.
Yeah.
They were loaded with. It was. Some of them said they were disappointed because they didn't get to tell what they
I know.
came there prepared to tell.
And I knew they were going to drop it because I saw Ricky in the library reading the newspapers, and he said, "Nope, that's a very bad idea, I've discovered."
Yeah.
That was before they'd even had the second meeting, so,
Huh.
so I figured they were going to drop
Yeah.
that. They weren't suicidal or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Well, he's the one that brought it up in the first place, and he said he did
Yeah.
at the second meeting.
Yeah.
He said, well, he spoke his piece too after Fred did. He said, well, I'm the one that brought this up in the first place. He said, but I hadn't read it, and I just thought it might be a good idea, and would save the county from getting sued. And so they asked David Baumgarten, if something did happen, could they sue the county? Could the victims sue the county? And he said, yeah, they can sue us, but he says, I don't think they will.
Yeah, you can always sue the county. I mean, you
Yeah.
can always sue, but
Yeah.
let me just.
You cut me off when I say,
Okay, wait a second.
Because,
Well, I didn't
we don't
get a
wanna-
chance to. So now, what do you have there?
well, just some, I was going to show you a picture of that old original Plant Street
Oh,
School.
okay.
Yeah,
All
I can
right.
show it to you after.
Okay. If you could have your druthers, what would you want for your kids and grandkids in the next few decades in this valley?
Well, I'd like to see him have the ability to buy a ranch, which now is impossible. And because they all they're all ranch oriented, and they all want a ranch. In fact, they've taken turns taking care of this place, and then they finally went into other jobs because there wasn't room for all of them, because this is just a small place.
Yeah.
I don't have a big place like Trampian Spans, and so I'd like to see the economy turn around and everything that's necessary for them to be able to buy a little place.
Yeah.
I know my newest son-in-law that's helping us out now, wants to ranch in the worst way, and can't make a down payment big enough to buy a place, and if he did buy a place, he'd never live long enough to pay for it. See, it took us 35 years to pay for this place, and we got it for probably a 12th or a 15th of what this place is worth now, and the way things are going.
Now, do you envision your sons taking over the place after you retire?
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. Yeah, they want to do that, and they want to keep it going.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah. But there's about 3 or 4 of them. See, we have 5 sons, and they're all interested in ranching, but they've had to do other things. You know, the boy Palmer that lived in Collard's house in town worked for Collard's at that time, and while he was doing that, while Mike was working here, and then Frank has worked here several years, and now he's found a place. He works for PD Sands up there, or Copper.
Right.
It is now.
Yeah.
But they'd all like to ranch, but there's just no way they can ever buy one.
Yeah, unless the economy changes. Yeah. And I suppose the same thing's true for farmers too. Just push out the.
Yeah, the same things happen. The only way you can get a hold of a ranch now is to inherit it,
Yeah.
unless you have a lot of money.
Yeah.
And we don't have a lot of money around
Right.
here.
Right.
You know.
Okay.
Is that about what?
Yeah, that's good. Is there anything I forgot to ask you about that I should have asked you? Or anything you wanted to say that I didn't give you a chance to say?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay,
No.
well, thanks, Bob.
Mhm.